working mainly in the development management team, working with developers, but also pushing SuDS wherever we can in Sheffield. And this scheme I'm going to take you through, which has happened really quite rapidly because of the funding opportunity that arose. And it's very much an inner city regenerational investment, but taking an opportunity to bring water into that environment, just to kind of look at Sheffield city centre. And some of the things that we've been doing already are around regeneration, which have been zones of the city, and then these routes through the city. So zones to do with retail, or zones to do with office development, but then these routes, so the gull route, the steel route, are ways of actually giving a kind of coherence to the city, a legibility to the city. These are the two routes here, and then this is one route that's gone in, and another route runs up through here. This is the location of the Great Green route, which was very much more about actually an opportunity to green a whole linear route through the city and bring in parts of the city that have been a bit neglected. I don't know whether you can see here, we've got the River Don here running through. This is what flooded in 2007. This was the route to get to the M1 for a lot of people running through the city. It was running, cutting, severing through the city, very busy dual carriageway. And the Inner Relief Road was built a number of years ago, and what that did allowed a whole chunk of the city to be brought into the city centre effectively by isolating that traffic. But what we still had was isolating infrastructure at the northern end of the city. So I'm going to talk you through where we're up to with this scheme, because it's only partial, but a bit about the area, the constraints. There's a lot of this dual carriageway, which was the railings running through the middle of it. As I say, a lot of traffic went through there. Now it's obsolete infrastructure, effectively highway. Very poor image to the area. We had a flooding legacy. This is rather, can't see the light with the light here, but we had the 2007 flooding here, which ripped through the heart of this area. Basically just coming out of the channel, so that we had that sort of history to the area, and the I suppose providing a block to redevelopment. But there were opportunities. The riverside itself was an opportunity rather than just the flooding aspect. There's an opportunity to try and make the river a part of the focus, and actually realise some of these large-scale developments that have sort of been a bit stagnant for a while. I suppose the theme here was to try and make the most of that space, that linear route, which was this tarmac dual carriageway running through for about a kilometre, 1.2 kilometres, and actually try to make the most of space as best we can. This was not a common opportunity, so layering up these ideas of how you can actually achieve these different things, the economic regeneration. The Riverside Business District, a huge area of office development that was yet to happen, had been stalled for many years. How can we bring this about? So the economic driver was the key thing behind this scheme. But what else can you achieve as well as the improving the environment to make it safe and attractive and a place for investment? The connectivity, the severing nature of these dual carriageways meant that there was still that isolation, even though the traffic maybe wasn't as heavy. We still had these railings in the middle of roads and huge areas of tarmac. So trying to get better connectivity between places and use this also to generate new connectivity. And obviously these other areas as well, with water management being part of that. How can we maybe have a layer of water management as part of the regeneration of this area? Obviously habitat, there's nothing, it was all pure tarmac. So it was this idea of what can we achieve in a small place, small space. And these were the kind of key concepts that came in the design of this. So this perceptual change, how do you create new space out of old highway? Linear spaces, places to stop and be within the zone of where we have the law courts and the offices. We have a lot of those sorts of developments in this area, but there was absolutely nowhere to gather and enjoy the environment. The SuDS management, I'll just describe why that came in. You're probably thinking, why did we choose to do SuDS here? But this was some history to that. Sustainable transport and connectivity. How do we actually take an opportunity to make cycling easier in this area through what was very busy traffic before and was still really quite unattractive for cycling? Using meadow planting, so quite a different style of planting to what you would normally get in a city centre. So we're actually looking at really introducing a lot of biodiversity and colour and expanding the season of the colour for this type of planting. and something also that maybe has a different maintenance regime to your normal shrubs or whatever you might get in the city centre. So reclaiming the highways, obviously trying to get those spaces that were not there before was absolutely critical. So you got this total sense of change of atmosphere in this area. So the water aspect, why do we say we want to do SuDS here? This is a bit of history. It's gone on for a number of years, but water's been quite an important part of regeneration in Sheffield already, both in the River Don. This is a scheme I was the project manager for. This is flood defence on the River Don in the city centre, but taking opportunity of marrying funds together at the same time as flood defence money, but also open space money from developer contributions, and actually trying to make the riverside special. This is a deculverting in the city centre, actually creating spaces by the river. And again, not just river, it's about surface water as well, and actually making surface water part of the quality of development and making places special. So there was a bit of a history there. There was a lot of drive from the regeneration team. They were the key players in terms of as client, this scheme. And the Five Ways Walk, which runs all along this river, they've been proponents for that for many years, to try and create access up against the river all the way through the city whenever an opportunity came about. So the SuDS was sort of part of that mix of trying to be innovative with water in the environment. It seemed a logical step to take in terms of making that an aim of the scheme. Now, what kicked it off? Because this was all, on theory at the time. This is the sort of desire that we wanted to see, this idea of regenerating this green network. But the funding was really what kicked it off. The ERDF programme end of 7 to 13, and an opportunity as these arise with the ERDF. If you can get your bids in time, then you may be able to get your scheme into the programme. We managed to do that, and really that galvanised a very rapid development of the scheme, because it had to be spent by 2015. So it really was a ridiculously, October 14 was when the ERDF contract was signed by the authority. We had to underwrite the match funding, which eventually was secured through the Sheffield City Region Infrastructure Fund. So that's your total budget there, effectively 3.4 million. This is a high profile setting outside the law courts, and it's about actually quality regeneration of a city centre environment. So that's why it's quite a high level of budget, high quality materials, and obviously the economic case for this was the main driver behind all this, obviously with the RDF and the Region Fund. That was the main driver about numbers of jobs being supported, numbers of square metres of office space being supported. That was the whole driver behind getting this money in to make this fundamental change. I hope you can read that. You probably can't, but I'll talk you through it, because this is really critical. We had a very short time scale, but I think this was the reason we were able to get through this and actually get some of the innovation in. Is about the team that was brought together. The top of here we have the client, who's a regeneration team. The lead designer here, we have quite a large landscape architecture team in the authority who do most of the public realm work in Sheffield. And in that respect, I think we're maybe a little bit unusual, but there's I suppose a lot of track record of developing the quality and working with the highways bodies within the authority. So they were the lead architects and were up for innovation. They were up for this challenge. We had the highways design was led by Amy, and Amy are the contractors. So we have a 25-year PFI contract on our highways in Sheffield, which is a huge burden. And I know all about that with various things. But to have them as the designer for highways meant that there was buy-in from the future manager from the beginning, and I think that was absolutely critical. We had SuDS advisory and modelling support from Robert Bray Associates and Anthony McCloy working on the modelling from McCloy Consulting, and they were brought in really to support the design teams here within the authority and within Amy. And I think that was a way of working this. They were not light touch, but they provided the confidence to these two main designers to go forward with SuDS, and that we were doing the right things. We had planting advisory role. I mentioned about the meadow from Professor Nigel Dunn at the university. Nigel was the one who's behind the Olympic Park vegetation. So we were game on for trialling, or not trialling, but trying out some of these vegetations he's done. within a city centre context, within a high profile context. Myself, I was there to challenge all the way through, support the landscape architect, because there was a constant discussion going on and challenging some of the issues which I'll talk about. Then we had the principal design. But I've written these words in the middle because I think this characterises what was happening here with a high level of commitment. We were all mainly Sheffield people working in Sheffield, committed to delivering this in the long term. We were willing to take the risks because this was a SuDS in really a very high profile setting. Teamwork, trust, long-term view. We were going to be looking after this for the future. So the landscape architect was going to be, the team there was going to be watching this for the next 10, 15 years for the rest of their career. So there was kind of high commitment and wanting to learn through this process. This is the overall greater green. This is the lump we've just delivered, so it's just over half a kilometre in the middle there. So it's a linear green network effectively running through, taking out a lot of tarmac and putting in a lot of green. And that's the main principle here, is the opportunity of space, bringing green in these layers, as I mentioned before. We have the old markets and the old castle is under here. We're deculverting the sheaf, which joins the Don. This is where Sheffield started. So it's quite an important historical area as well for Sheffield. But as I say, this was the first phase here. This is the main law court for Sheffield, and these are all quite high profile. We've got the Home Office here and so on. So Home Office, part of the Home Office, obviously. So sustainable drainage was there as a concept from the beginning. How can we, inspired by linear landscapes around the world, actually start to introduce water? So this is very much the conceptual stage. So the SuDS rationale, if you like, it was regeneration driven. It's not driven by a water problem. We haven't got, say, a major issue with combined sewer overflows or surface water flooding. It was very much a choice. 5 minutes already gone. Anyway, there we are. So it's about making water an asset to the landscape, removing flows obviously out of the combined sewer, because we're actually taking flows, this is the outfall, to the Don. We're diverting them from the combined sewer system. So we're returning those flows. So this is obviously what we wanted to do, was those areas of SuDS design. So that's why we brought the SuDS designers in to help us deliver these things, these mimicking nature, water on the surface, treatment on the surface, interception and controlling the flows. Just quickly on, we had a lot of contamination, and the risks from the contamination report were seal the whole system, line everything. And we were really not in favour of that from a variety of reasons. We'd like to have that infiltration potential. We'd like to have the connectivity for planting rather than being isolated by a layer. So we challenged that. We got more studies done to model the contaminants. We removed some, and the view was that we were actually in very low risk for mobilising contaminants to the watercourses nearby. So we ended up with a non-line system predominantly. So it's capture over edge, so the flush curbs, so again a new thing for the highways team. 27 swale cells, I'll show you the plan, and a number of controls, but I'll whip through here. And as Kevin mentioned, the art of the possible, it's all about the art of the possible with these systems. What area, what depth, what length, what can you do with what you have, what's the topography, and obviously modelling the different options, maybe iterating the number of different designs and controls that we can have within that. So that's the design. It's 27 swale cells running along by the road, laterally capturing the flow off the road and carrying that flow. So the large cells on the more shallow gradients, steeper on the more steeper gradients, carrying that flow all the way to the River Don outfall over here. So it's just falling slowly in one direction. And obviously the cells looking at them close up, and then in cross section it starts to give you what's the basis for trying to determine how this thing will function, all the sections through the swale all the way through, and how that's modelled, and those swale cells and what they're delivering from the flow captured locally off the road and what they're inheriting from the cell above. I'm not going to go into that, but that's obviously showing the delay in flow through the system. And I'll summarise that shortly. But this is the main feature, these walls here that run through, these check walls, controlling the flow at low level and having overflows as well. These are the walls going in, just to show you the structures. This is the control structures at each wall that actually have an orifice to control the flow, and there's 3 different sizes of orifice. And then the water's delivered out of through the other side of this wall in a perforated pipe at the other side. And I'll show you this. This is then, here's the control structure here with the perforated pipes during construction. So the flow is running through the wall at low level, controlled to fill up the cells, but it has the overflow equally down the system over the top of the walls through weirs. And we're not looking greenfield runoff rate here, but we are looking at a major reduction in the flow rate from the site, controlling a 1 in 30, the 1 in 100 to some extent as well. So we're looking at a reduction and improvement significant here, obviously taking out the combined sewer. But I'm going to run through a few slides here just to show you where we are. This is before one view here. This is the excavation and the breaking out and the forming of the check dams. These are actually lined, these check dams here. This was a lined area to actually generate a different habitat. So this is actually wetland habitat at this end of the system. The soils come in, we're all recycled glass, recycled compost, recycled crushed stone, and then some waste soil from sugar beet washings. And that generated effectively like a green roof material, an engineered soil. And overlying that, the planting was grown off site, obviously a huge diversity of mainly perennial species. This is not a wet environment on the whole, this is quite a dry environment. The plants are going in here, and it's mulched with a crushed sandstone, which provides quite a high resilience surface. And this is it establishing with the fence down the middle, which is now gone, to just prevent people walking through it. So this is your series of swale cells and there's an overflow chamber down the bottom. And now it's establishing, we're almost to the present day now. Lots of services, which we knew about a lot of them, but also we didn't know about some of them. And some of them were massive and were far more significant when we actually got in the ground. One of them was a huge electric cable which would take out half of Sheffield if we damaged it. We actually put these over the top of services where they were retained, so that was something to warn people. But yeah, original intentions actually ended up with some quite problematic ones. Where this was the electric cable and a complete reconfiguration. I don't know whether you can see here, but this whole area was new. We weren't going to have it before, but the water had to be diverted off and brought back in. We were lucky that that electric cable didn't blow the whole scheme, quite frankly. We were able to still have continuity of flow through the system. This was the bespoke overflows. This is where the water runs in the final basin to the river. This runs to the river. If that gets blocked, there's an overflow to the sewer, just in case that is the case. Just some of the images of the landscapes. I mean, this is here. This is dished, so flows on the surface are picked up in this channel, but there's a low flow channel that runs also from the upper the cell up here. This is through the orifice, and this is for the higher flow, where we have to have pedestrian crossing in front of the law courts. This is some of the edge detailing, which was done in a bound gravel. I'm not sure that this is really the best solution, but this was just trialling this idea as a bound gravel edge before it runs into the crushed sandstone. So the overall scheme, the reduction in management in the area, actually when you looked at it, we had taken out traffic lights and all sorts of surfaces. The end scheme is less maintenance liability for Amy, so actually we didn't have to pay anything. But the actual SuDS maintenance really in the calculation was very low. It's a simple cut and collect of the vegetation each year. It's not kind of going in and digging up, and it is a cut and collect. It's like a meadow management approach. We have 3 years with a kind of specialist contractor to get through the initial establishment, but with Amy watching. Nearly there. Placemaking. This is just some of the final images. This is obviously a regenerational project. It's about the economy of this area and placemaking, creating spaces, and the change in actually generating a new feel to the area. Some of the interpretation that's gone on site to help people understand, just some of the images of this scheme. Yorkshire Water have taken an interest but it's been difficult to get them involved because they didn't have a full drainage area plan for this area, but they are taking interest in the scheme as an example. We're going to revisit the model now that we've built it because there's been changes. We've got the future ones, challenges with cycle routes, I think with cycle space in the future for the next phases. That will be one of our key issues that we're going to have to address. How much space have we got for SuDS when there's that demand for cycle areas as well? Just leave you with that image. I mean, I think this has been a great scheme in terms of learning experience. We've had a great team. I think the landscape architects have really gained huge confidence in doing this scheme. And we're already moving on to other schemes. We've already got other public realm. The attitude now is landscapes can all be up for managing water, which is what Kevin was talking about. And that is, I think they've realised that this isn't as complex as it is. They've got the passion to drive it forward because it's part of the public realm. So that is the future. I think Sheffield's going to do, you're going to see a lot more of these in Sheffield in the future. Okay.